Digital technology and solutions give us the room to think outside of the box. How can we be the most creative, innovative, or forward-thinking organizations and technology implementers out there? However, agriculture really makes us think about how we can simplify our processes. This session, When Low Tech is High Tech, is going to look at just that. How do we use the most simple, well-established, and well-known technologies, such as radio, to think about implementation, communicating with farmers, and building robust agriculture systems? Stay tuned.
Have you ever been caught out without your cell phone and wondered how you're going to navigate to a location or find out news or connect with friends? Well, that's the reality for most of the developing world that have little or poor access to digital infrastructure. And so this session is going to explore some of those issues and how we address them. So sometimes less is more, and that's true for technology too. So some of the best digital solutions are the simplest digital solutions to empower farmers around the world to realize their full potential. This session is going to explore how we use tools that we sometimes think is simple or take for granted, but how are really important in empowering farmers to be commercially successful, resilient, and really feel empowered to lead better livelihoods. And so today it's my privilege. My name is David Bergmanson. I'm going to be your moderator. My privilege to introduce to you Shreya Agarwal from Digital Greens Community Video. Welcome, Shreya. Rex Chapota will speak about farm radio and their programs on ICT to empower farmers. We have Elise Dykstra from Vimeo, based in Nepal, who's going to be teaching us about how they use mobile phone platforms to connect farmers to markets. And Kamil Yakubov from DAI, Uzbekistan, who's going to talk to us about value chains and how we empower farmers to be full participants in value chains through simple technology. And so with that, I would just like to talk to each of our panelists, have them introduce themselves. My own background is in digital agriculture. I started a program for the Gates Foundation in this domain and later led an institution in India, focused on dryland agriculture, and now working on climate science to see how we empower farmers to adapt to climate change. So that's a little bit of my narrative, but I really want to hear from our diverse panelists about, what they see as really their motivating force to do the kinds of work they're doing in each of their domains, and just sort of get a personal lens on that. So Shreya, can we start with you?
Hello, everyone. So as I was mentioning about our experience at Digital Green of using community videos to strengthen extension. We've been working for over a decade, and more recently, these learnings have been complemented by a USAID-funded developing local extension capacity project that we're doing as well across India and in Africa. So let's start with talking about a typical farmer, a smallholder farmer with less than 2 hectares of land, limited literacy, struggling to make ends meet, specifically not knowing who to trust for quality information and services. In contrast, you have extension agents who've been mandated to support such farmers, and they have their own struggles, not having received adequate training often and unable to reach the sheer magnitude of farmers that they're tasked to reach. So at Digital Green, we have been working on scaling an approach called community video, through which relevant agronomic and livestock related content is shared via short, locally produced videos. And these are by farmers, for farmers, and feature farmers themselves, and are screened in in-person group settings, as what you can see in the image here. This approach has reached approximately 2 million farmers across India and Ethiopia, and in controlled evaluations, we have run a couple of RCTs. We found that it's led to up to a 45% increase in uptake of practices versus more traditional in-person non-digital systems. And that has, again, implications on yield and incomes as well. So Videos can be considered as fairly low tech, especially in this day and age, but as an audiovisual medium, we find that it works. But what really is important is not the technology, but actually the human element and the partnerships that we have to enable. So at Digital Green, we work with partners, specifically governments. In India and Ethiopia, for example, with the National Rural Livelihood Mission, and also builds on the social networks like self-help groups, development groups that already exist. So when we screen these videos, farmers often ask us, who's featured in these videos? Is this actually relevant to our context? And we found that featuring farmers themselves in the videos is really what increases the adoptions. Finally, for any approach to be successful, it has to also reach the most marginalized, and therefore we reach women farmers. For instance, 90% of the farmers we reach in India are women. And we found that by directly reaching them, we're increasing their knowledge, their adoptions, as well as their participation in decision making. Now, with COVID-19, in-person screenings are often not possible, and therefore remote learning opportunities are extremely important, like radio, IVR, SMS, WhatsApp, which you will hear about. And we actually believe that it's not an either or. We can have integrated solutions, and those have been successful. So in India, we layered in IVR on top of video, and we found that it led to a 74% increase in adoptions. Finally, data is extremely important. So we collect data for our farmers and ensure that it's used to iterate the next generation of videos and can actually power some of our more high-tech solutions as well. So with that, I actually want to end with a video. And it includes the voices of some of our partners and communities on the ground.
ከዚህ ቀደም የጤና መልእክቶችን የምናስተላልፍ ቤት ለቤት በመሄድ አንዳንዴ በስብሰባ ቦታዎች በመገኘት በቤተ ክርስቲያን ሰው በተሰባሰበበት በመሄድ በንግግር ነበር የምናስተላልፍ መልእክት። አሁን በቪዲዮ ስናስተምር ያው አርሶ አደሮችን በየአካባቢያቸው በሚቀርባቸው ቦታ በመሰብሰብ በቪዲዮ በሚታይ ነገር እነሱ በሚገባቸው መንገድ በሚያውቁት እና በሚያውቁት ሰውና በሚያውቁት ነገር ላይ ተንተርሰን በቪዲዮ በማሳየት
ከዛው ግን በዋናነት ወረዳ በተለየ ቪዲዮ ፕሮዳክሽን ቲም የሚባል አለ። እሱ ተደራጅቶ እነዚህ መልካም የሚባሉ ተሞክሮች ላይ መሰረት አድርጎ አርሶ አደሩ የሚሰራቸውን ስራዎች ከአርሶ አደሩ ጋር ማለት ነው አይቶ የማመን ጉዳይ አድርጌ ስለምወስደው ማለት ነው በቀላሉ አርሶ አደሩም እየገለጸው ነው ማለት በቀላሉ መረዳት የሚቻል ስለሆነ በራሱ ቋንቋ በራሱ ሁኔታ እየተተገበረ ስለሆነ እንትኑ ቪዲዮ የሚሰራው
The Digital Green platform is now a part of Jivika's extension strategy. Once we realized the efficacy of this medium, in all our plannings, we incorporated this as a very potent tool.
Seeing is believing. Even the attitude of the farmers is changing. They are critically demanding to fulfill the gap regarding the technical implementation. Digital Green approach is becoming the most critical for the strategy which is already in place.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. And if you have any questions, happy to take them at a later point.
My name is Rex Chapota. I'm the Regional Program Manager for Farm Radio International in East and Southern Africa, and also the Strategic Opportunities Advisor. My story about when low tech becomes high tech is about the power of radio. Our work in Africa, more specifically in 41 countries, working with 1,000 radio partners, is reaching over 200 million farmers through over 35 active projects. And this is happening because radio is so unique. And how is radio unique? It's because it's inexpensive. It is nimble. You can be able to deliver information quickly in real time. And what an opportunity has radio provided during this COVID-19 pandemic. Radio is also interactive. If you combine it with other devices like mobile phones, radio becomes a two-way communication with good feedback loops, and it amplifies voices. And our work in radio, and what do we do basically as Farm Radio International? We provide support and resources and training to broadcasting stations so that they can reach their audiences better. We also come up with radio innovations where integration with other mobile platforms is very key. And we run impact projects to get results at scale. It costs only about 50 cents to provide one of the programs to a farming family. It's not one channel that makes a difference. It's also not just about awareness. It's about motivating and supporting behavior change. And indeed, it's about also strengthening face-to-face advisory services so that we can be able to reach communities at scale. An interesting quote from one of the key informants in an evaluation in Tanzania said, what radio does is that it brings everybody together. We're able to work together to create content. Research people, farmers, and specialists working together is so key in radio. So partnerships are part of the package of radio programming. And indeed, as part of our fear of change, we believe that we need to work together with various stakeholders. Let's invest in rural radio. Let's empower broadcasters with skills and good content to deliver powerful radio. Let us ensure that this is done in a sustained fashion so that we can have a prosperous, vibrant, and just rural Africa. And this is done because we always want to make sure that radio is a more powerful force for good in rural Africa, one that shares knowledge, amplifies voices, and leads to positive change. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, David. So I'm Elise Dykstra, I'm the Regional Program Manager for Asia with Viamo, and today I'll be talking to you all about our project to link farmers with markets through mobile phones. So Sweta here is a smallholder farmer. She's had a lot of increased access to information and been able to translate that into increased yields. But she still struggles to find market access to be able to then translate the increased yields into actual increased livelihoods. This is a very common challenge that smallholder farmers face globally. So Viamo looked at how can we design a platform that would help digitize the agriculture value chain in a way that their farmers like Sweta. What the service looks like is farmers call in to a hotline that's IVR based. So they hear pre-recorded voice messages in their local language, and then they follow prompts. So we'll ask them questions like, are you a farmer? If yes, press 1. If you're a buyer, press 2. Using this information, they're able to register for the service. Depending on the product that they are producing and so on, then buyers can call in the same process and answer. So we started this off in Nepal, and we were able to pilot it on our 321 service. Our 321 service is an IVR-based toll-free hotline, which we have partnered with mobile network operators in over 18 countries to make it accessible at scale and sustainable for long term. So people can call in and pull information when they want, including across a range of different development topics. And in Nepal, they can also use it then to create market linkages. So over the pilot, we had on average around 1,500 farmers and similar question. We saw in Nepal that there was definitely an appetite for such a service, and that the matches could lead to the impact that we are hoping for, with them being able to make sales and then have improved income. So we wanted to see if we could take those learnings from Nepal and adapt them in new geographies, in new contexts, and with different crops. So we are now piloting the service in Indonesia and in Niger. And as we continue to pilot, we continue to iterate and test. Also going to be testing here in Nepal, expanding it to other stakeholders. Can we use the same concept and link farmers with input suppliers or with service providers? And we're also always looking at, when does market linkages make sense? When does it not? So in Madagascar, we did a design research, and we found that the main constraint for farmers there in reaching markets was on logistics, so on transportation and on storage of their products. It wasn't on actually making that connection. So we decided that in that case, market linkages wasn't the right answer. And instead, we did remote training of cooperatives and empowered the cooperatives to fill those gaps. So what is the future of the market linkage service? We're now looking at the back end and how we can increase it and use higher technology to make those matches more effective, make them smarter, and to make them faster. So we're building out new algorithms and looking at using machine learning and artificial intelligence to make the service even better for those smallholder farmers. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kamil Yakubov. I'm a PR manager for agricultural value chains activity in Uzbekistan. So, social media in agriculture, this is going to be my topic today. I'll be shortly talking about how simple videos can make change in agricultural value chains. Also about the role of them in promoting high-value commercial horticulture in Uzbekistan. So agricultural value chains, if to talk about the project briefly, it's a project that is aimed at promoting high-value commercial horticulture in Uzbekistan, and it has 4 components. Actually, the project ended last month. And we worked in 4 directions. It's production, post-harvest handling, marketing, and education. So here you can see what each component was aimed at. Next slide. So public relations and horticulture. As I said before, when I came to this project, I didn't know what to do and what kind of role I'll be performing to promote our high value commercial horticulture. So then I figured out how people wanted to know that what we're doing and how we're doing, and so people wanted to get new information, and so we started working using the traditional ways of media dissemination, for example, printing manuals, books for farmers, and training them, teaching them, going out the field. But it was not enough. It was not sufficient for farmers. So they needed more information. And as you know, internet in Uzbekistan in 2015, when the project launched, internet started developing faster. And when I saw the statistics that over 4 billion people are on the internet, and each person on the internet is watching more than one video every given second, I tried to producing videos out of the trainings that were holding on fields. And by 2020, it was predicted that the mobile internet coverage will reach 98% in Uzbekistan. So actually, I can say that it did. In just 2020, we had 40% growth on mobile internet usage. So 2015, AVC launched. We started working with TV, radio, magazines, newspapers. I mean, as in many traditional, projects, outreach and communications persons, they reach out to those traditional media outlets and send press releases and give interviews, etc. But in 2015 and 16, blogging was also trending, just becoming into trend, and more influencers were appearing, and we had an idea of launching on our own blog, but unfortunately we had no kind of permission from our donor to launch our website or our Facebook profiles, pages, or etc. So we found someone who already has kind of a blog, a Facebook group with like 3,000 people, and he was giving out some recommendations on horticulture, and started feeding his platform with content, mainly with videos and textual and photo and posters, digital copies of all of the training materials that we've produced. We would feed into these platforms, and we also opened a YouTube channel for him, and now his Facebook group has over 64K users, and YouTube page has over 200 videos. So by now, in 4 years, I would say, because it was launched a year later, we got 4 billion views, and the growth is accelerating every month. I would say, for example, it took us 3 years to get the first 2 billion views, and another 1 billion views we got in 6 months, and another next 4th billion views we got in only 3 months. We also use Telegram to cross disseminate our content in Telegram. It looks like WhatsApp, but it's way better than WhatsApp. In Telegram, we have this channel under the same name. By the way, the platform is called Bağdorçilik İlmi. It's translates as Science of Horticulture, to mine data on which we can produce our next content. Yeah, and this data helped us to know to what fields we have to focus and give more, produce more content. So traditional methods didn't die; they just transformed it into digital. I mean, the posters we did, the manuals we did, we kept sharing it through our platforms on Telegram, on YouTube, on Facebook, and overall we've been able to started our webinars, online trainings. Engagement was high. We got from 500 to 1,000 people view our trainings online, like farmers, like post-harvest people, producers, and so on. So this was my actually last slide. Thank you for your attention.
In our discussion, I'd like us to talk a little bit about these challenges. I was really glad to see that many of you highlighted the efficiency or effectiveness of your interventions, really important, as well as the cost of these interventions, and the number of people and the types of people that you can reach. So that's all great. But, there's some lingering questions around, for example, what is, given radio its lasting value to disseminate information. And Rex, you pointed out, the power of mobile to get that feedback loop to engage audiences. What do you see as the next step in low-tech innovations to further enhance engagement by rural communities?
Thank you, David. Indeed, I think what we are seeing is that radio, though it could be low tech, is not being replaced by high tech, as it were. What we are seeing is the kind of amplifying and making it better. So even if you're looking at issues in the future, AI, ML, we see that there will be that kind of integration with radio still. But also because in the rural areas, what we call new and high tech, in most places it doesn't exist, most specifically in sub-Saharan Africa. So here we can talk about all those high techs, but are they there at the doorstep of the farmer? So that's why we see that the future is that low tech will still be there, but high tech will not necessarily replace, but integrate and make low tech more powerful.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Rex, is that we've got sort of these foundational technologies that have been with us for over 100 years. And as new technology comes online or becomes accessible due to infrastructure investments or technology advances, that these are evolving around these foundational technologies. And so, Trey, I have the same question then to you around video. Again, it's a little bit more modern than radio, but nonetheless, we're seeing technology evolve around that. And you mentioned Digital Green starting to use AI and machine learning to support and further enhance those services. What do you see as the next wave of innovation around video?
Thanks, David. So I think one thing to say is that, and this has been mentioned by some of our panelists here, it's not an either or. A lot of people spoke about how it's really reinforcing channels that can be used. So for instance, Camille spoke about sharing of videos, but via Telegram or WhatsApp, right? Or layering in IVR, not only on top of radio, which Rex shared, but also layering in IVR on top of video. So I think when we're looking at the future, having a more consistent way of integrating these different channels is important. And I think one other thing to say about what's really important is that these channels be two-way in nature as much as possible. So a big part of it, and again, my colleagues have spoken about, it's really about like collecting that data to be able to continue to iterate and really provide the relevant information that's needed. Right. So like, for example, I see, you work at where you have weather data. Now, how is it that we can integrate that weather data with the content that we're providing in order to ensure that it's as relevant and timely for our farmers? And for that, it requires an infrastructure of data, not just the collection of quality data, but also a way in which we can share it with organizations that are on this panel. And I think that's really going to continue to be the next frontier. And I think one final point is, in all of this, just remembering that it's really getting the incentives, the human piece right, because we can often get excited about the use of AI for precision messaging, but if we don't understand what's motivating the community workers and farmers, it's really not going to work.
Yeah, that's a great point, Treya. Thanks for bringing that up, that we really have to take a human-centered design, whether we're talking about high tech or low tech. At the end of the day, it's distilling all of that technology into something that's valued, actionable, and will improve the livelihoods of the people that we're trying to serve. So really good point. And it sort of leads me to my next question to all of you. You know, given that we've got this menu of wonderful technologies, high tech and low tech, how does an organization know which ones are most appropriate to serve the development outcomes that they're focused on? And that's a real challenge. You know, you can be overwhelmed by the options. And Camille, you pointed out to many of those options around communication. You know, what's the right one for your audience? So I open that up. You know, how do you really take that mindset of human-centered design to best serve your community with different technologies? So what's your process for figuring that out?
Yes, David, if I may respond.
Yeah, please go ahead, Elise.
Yeah.
So I think you really hit it on the nail on the head. Really taking a human-centered design approach and understanding the users and what mediums they're already using and are comfortable with, whether that's radio or if they do have smartphones and have access to data, then using more WhatsApp and other video platforms, or if they're only using their phones to make calls using IVR. So really making sure that we understand those users and also the ecosystem within that as well. So what is the local context that they're facing? What are challenges and barriers are they facing? Do they share that mobile phone across their household? And does the man normally hold on to that phone? Really understanding that and using that then to design the platform that is created. And also with that, thinking about not everybody is the same. My preferences are going to be different from Rex's or Shreya's or other people. So also thinking about taking a multi-channel approach and using IVR and layering in IVR with radio and with mobile apps and different platforms to be able to reach more individuals at their comfort level.
Yeah, that's a great point, Elisa. And I think, you know, that's so important to understand your audience and what their preferences are. You know, anyone else on this, you know, if you will, decision tree on appropriate channels for your audiences?
Yes, David, that's a great question. Alice, thank you. I sign up under every word. Actually, if they think low tech actually is paving way for a high tech, with giving people something simple to digest, you give people opportunity to learn more and eventually reaching to that high tech. For example, with the videos and the platforms we introduced to people in 2015, when we asked, only like 2 or 3% of the farmers had smartphones. Like now, I can say that this indicator is about like 60-70%. And with the YouTube, with the Telegram, we reached out to farmers and let them know that this kind of content is there, and we're creating this content for them. And later we introduced Zoom to them. We introduced WebEx, and in the beginning they all had problems. They didn't know how to connect. They didn't even have like Gmail accounts. They didn't even have they didn't know how to go to Play Market or App Store and download some apps. We did special small like 1-minute videos how to create Gmail account and disseminated these videos.
So that's a really good point, Camille, you're bringing up. You're not just disseminating knowledge around agriculture practices, but also the use of technology. So you know, you're empowering them really in two different ways. You know, this transition to this ecosystem of communication channels, but also the information that's going to help them be more successful farmers. So really good point. And Fritz, I'd like to get your perspective on this, because, you know, as a content provider in radio, it's dynamic and you're exploring all these different channels, but, you know, in different countries, how do you make a decision of where you want to place your emphasis?
Thank you, David. I would say what is key is let our platforms be demand driven. So one of the key things that Farm Radio International does all the time is to make sure we have got a systematic audience research so that we really understand if people need the services that we are providing. And to me, that's core. Secondly, let's provide services which are fit for purpose. In this case, for example, for radio, what we are seeing more and more happening is that people are looking for scale. People are looking at how they can reach millions of farmers. So if you look at that kind of purpose in mind, then you can choose the kind of platform that you need, but also the kind of content itself. There is some content that you need visuals, for example, which are more hands-on. So it's not just about doing it for the sake of doing it, is let's do it because it will meet the purpose of what the audience or the client are looking for. So to us, that's what we're seeing happening. That's why one of our key lessons is let's look at multimedia approaches. Let's look at integration, because it's not only one technology, neither is it about low tech or high tech. It's the combination what makes a difference to the farmers out there.
Yeah, thank you, Rex. You struck a chord with me. I'm very big on demand-driven innovation. I've seen so many wonderful technologies fail because they were not demanded by the clients we're trying to serve. I learned that very early on in my days as a corn breeder, a maize breeder, and so one of the things that I like, and you guys have been sharing a wealth of information and insights to help people navigate, the ecosystem of different information channels. I would like to know, how do you measure your success? What are the key performance indicators each of you are using? And you presented some of those in your presentations, but it'd be great just to quickly cut across all four of you to see what are your KPIs? How do you measure success and why? Shreya, why don't you start off?
Sure. So David, we have two levels of metrics. One is at a farmer level and the other is at a system level. At the farmer level, we record not just reach, but also actual behavior change, which is collected via in-person verifications of whether or not a practice has been adopted or not. Of course, these approaches are changing as we're moving towards more hybrid approaches as well. But also for things like trying to see if that adoption can translate into yield and incomes, we run RCTs to help answer that question. But just to say, the caveat is attribution is difficult. In order to make and actually be able to say you've made an impact on yield and income, it requires a certain amount of time. So it's a difficult channel that we are continuing to try to crack. At the system level, as we were saying, a big part of what we do is building the capacity of others and our partners. So we have two metrics, one around the actual capacity, how much can partners do on their own? And then the second is, to what extent are they continuing to institutionalize and sustain this, and which means actually investing their own resources. And then finally, another last metric for system level would be cost effectiveness that we've spoken about. So for the system, in order to drive adoption, what has been the cost? Yeah.
Thank you. Elise, what about yourself? Some additional key performance indicators for your program?
Yes, we're quite similar. So we first have metadata, so we can see how many users are accessing the service and what do their interactions look like. So how far within, if it's an IVR call, how far do they make it on the IVR call? Do they finish the call or do they drop off at certain points? As well, are they calling back in? So after they've registered one time, do they call back in? Do they register 2 times, 3 times, or become a super user where they start using it on a regular basis? Then we also are trying to have more of an impact, be more impact driven and be more better about seeing what actual behavior change we're creating with our services. So going beyond just the user data, but also figuring out how we can measure knowledge, attitudes, and practices and see what changes the services are creating in those behavior changes and knowledge changes. So we're trying to embed more surveys within our programming to be able to measure that over time, as well as then do feedback surveys to also do self-reported changes.
Great, thank you. Fritz, anything new in addition to what has already been mentioned around KPIs?
Yes, actually, in the context of radio, it becomes even more complex as it could be, especially because of scale. How do you measure millions of listeners listening to your broadcast? And right now, we are using the power of mapping and GIS for us to be able to look at coverage maps of radio stations. And this has become a powerful tool because people would want to really understand who is listening to us where. So that is something that we are doing a lot. And of course, indeed, all the key areas of knowledge, awareness, and actual practice. Because really, it's not about who listened, it's who has done what in their enterprise, what makes a difference. So those are the areas that we're looking at, and the challenges, of course, of attribution are cut across, I think, all digital platforms. Not an easy one, and sometimes, of course, the quasi, random controlled, trials could help, but not very easy at times. But indeed, these are some of the metrics that we're looking at, and at system level, difficult to really measure, but we are seeing that most of the funding agencies are asking us to say, how are you contributing to the overall food security, to the overall nutrition security? And these are areas now we're trying to see how we can start capturing those kind of indicators.
Yeah, I see two real challenges here. One is, you're building on a network of partners, and so issues of attribution, very tricky to navigate. Certainly there's a lot of anthropology behind that challenge. And then you've got some other, big challenges. All of us have mentioned COVID, the challenges that has presented in engagement, the challenges it presents to the people that we're trying to reach. Another big challenge is climate change. We haven't talked too much about that, but how do we help people adapt to climate change? And so KPIs that help us navigate both of these big global challenges are really important, I think, as we think about modern M&E. And so let's turn to Camille to tell us about the KPIs that you are using in DAI.
Actually, we mainly rely on our views and engagement, the number of comments and what kind of comments we have. My role in this project is to improve the visibility of the project of USAID, our donor, right? So we recently had a survey. We asked what kind of international organizations do you know in Uzbekistan that work in agriculture or horticulture. If you can see, here are the results. So USAID is among the top. It's actually the most of the people know USAID in who's as an international organization working in horticulture. We did the same survey on YouTube and Facebook with like audience of like 100,000 people, and we had the same response on Facebook, even 75%, like on YouTube over 50%. So this is one of the indicators, and because this blog thing, this videos thing came like not in the beginning of the project, after a year or a year and a half, we didn't have it as a kind of one like separate indicator. We didn't have KPI or something to track, but as this blog took off, the people who appeared, were featured in this blog, kept coming back saying, make a video about me, making a video about me, because they provided services, and more people were coming to them to provide services.
I think that's a great point, Camille, is you have to be adaptive. And I think,
yes.
That's sort of an underlying theme, I think, of our session here around low tech. Is actually high tech, because we're adapting constantly to the evolution of technology, the demands of clients or customers, and the ecosystem of challenges we're addressing, be it COVID, be it food security, be it climate change, be it equity issues. And so I just want to thank all of you for your contributions, great work, and also acknowledging the fact that we need to apply low tech to meet the demands and needs of the clients we serve, and recognizing there's a diversity of needs out there. And so there's a role for each of these technologies in supporting broad-based development. So I want to thank all of you for your contributions today, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David. Pleasure is mine.
Thank you, Rex. Thank you, Alice. Shreya, thank you.
We hope that you all have enjoyed our second set of breakouts, and we hope that you take a minute to really flex your fingers and make sure that you're not getting a cramp. And grab some water. Next, we're all going to be meeting back in our virtual plenary space to hear from experts in the gender world about how we can shrink the gender digital divide. Follow us to plenary.